Counsel. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear a man get killed with your own ears. You're going to hear the last words that he spoke, the pleas that he made to that defendant right there to stop. You're going to hear the words that that defendant spoke as he aggressively approached Corey Jones. You're going to hear the way that defendant treated Corey Jones in a matter of seconds, like nothing but a mere criminal. You're going to hear every gunshot fired out of that defendant's gun, which caused the bullets that ripped through Corey Jones' heart on October 17th and 18th of 2015. All this because Corey Jones, undeniably a black man, was on the side of the road waiting for a tow truck. Now, that's not accurate. It's not because Corey Jones was sitting there waiting for a tow truck. It's because that defendant right there chose to refuse to act like any reasonable law enforcement officer approaching a stranded citizen in help. That is why Corey Jones died that evening. He recklessly created a situation which could only be expected to result in somebody being seriously injured or killed. And all the evidence is going to show three things at the end of this trial. It's going to show that that defendant shot and killed Corey Jones. It's going to show that he at no time acted like a law enforcement officer. And it's going to show that he is guilty as charged of manslaughter and attempted first-degree murder with a firearm. You see, this isn't just a tragic story. This is a tragedy that was created. It was created by him. It resulted in an innocent man being killed. Corey Jones was doing nothing except waiting for help on the side of the road because his SUV broke down. And one of the few people that should have unquestionably been there to assist him on the side of that road did exactly the opposite. Instead of being Corey Jones' saving grace, he was his angel of death. The evidence will show that there's no way Corey Jones knew, even at the time that he was running, fleeing from the back of his vehicle, running into the dark, seeking cover, laying there on the ground, dying, breathing his last breath. No way that he knew that the person that actually shot and killed him was a law enforcement officer. This all started back in October 2015. You'll hear about Corey Jones. He was living his life. Had a good job at the Delray Beach Housing Authority. Lived with his brother. Loved his family. Loved music. Music was his passion. He was a drummer. He played in bands. He played at family functions and organizations. And that's what he was doing on a Saturday night, October 17th of 2015. He was up in Jupiter, and he was playing with a band called the Future Presidents. As he's playing with the band, they do what band members do. A couple of them had a couple beers. A couple of them had a little bit of marijuana. They get done around 1 o'clock in the morning. And so Corey does what he should do. He drives home. He makes the trek down south, going home. But unfortunately for Corey, he never makes it home. His SUV breaks down right around PGA Boulevard on I-95. So he pulls off, gets about up to the traffic light, pulls into the emergency lane like everybody is supposed to, and then does what anybody else would do that time of morning, with nobody else around when you're stranded. Start calling folks to help. He calls up the singer of the band, Matthew Huntsberger, who you're going to hear from. He lives right there close by. Matthew comes over. No problem. He just got home himself. Maybe there's something wrong with the oil. So Matthew goes and gets a couple quarts of oil, gives them to Corey Jones. That didn't do the trick. So he does what anybody would expect. He calls up a road ranger. See if he can get some assistance in starting up his SUV. Road ranger comes, and the SUV starts. But now you have the second person who's interacted with Corey Jones during that time in a non-confrontational manner. And it'll tell you the way that Corey Jones was acting. So Corey, once again, calls up his brother, CJ, who he lives with, who's actually waiting up for him that night. Asks for help. And CJ, being the good big brother, said, I'll come pick you up. I'll call you a tow truck. But Corey Jones had his drums in the back of his SUV, and he also had a promise that he was going to play those drums that Sunday morning for his family. He wasn't going to leave an expensive drum kit on the side of the road in a vehicle. He was going to make good on his promise. So he was going to wait for a tow truck. But you also now have a third person that talked to Corey Jones in a non-confrontational way. And then Corey does what he said he was going to do. He calls up AT&T Roadside Assistance. Talks to Madeline Toller, sales representative, health representative there to give him assistance. You're going to hear him talk to Madeline Toller because this whole phone call is recorded. You're going to hear the manner in which he spoke to her. The fourth person now that Corey Jones is talking to. He's out at the middle of the night on the side of the road, stranded. And unlike a lot of folks in this world, he was patient. He was nice. All he wanted was some help to get home. You'll hear it with your own ears. You'll hear how he's calm. You'll hear how he's giving her information just to get the help that he needs. But see, unfortunately for Corey Jones, his bad luck was turning much worse. Because unknown to him, that defendant was on duty. See, he was a police officer at that time in Palm Beach Gardens Police Department. He was working a detail, a plainclothes detail, where he was supposed to surveil neighborhoods, looking for car burglars. And if he saw anything, he's supposed to call up marked units to come and take care of the issue. And he has supposed to be wearing a tactical vest, like you see on TV, in the news, maybe in person, with big letters that say police across it. So everybody knows who he is. And if he gets out of that van, an unmarked van, he's supposed to be clearly identifiable as a law enforcement officer. Well, guess what? That's not what he was doing. He didn't have that vest on. He didn't have a badge around his neck. He didn't have a hat that said police. He didn't even have his radio or his department-issued firearm on him at the time. He was just sitting carelessly by in his van, unmarked. And instead of doing what everybody would expect a law enforcement officer to do when they're approaching a stranded, potentially abandoned, but at least a vehicle that's stranded on the side of the road, that defendant did everything wrong. He did everything that you would not expect. He's driving an unmarked white van, and he comes along and he goes up the wrong way of an I-95 exit ramp. He goes up the wrong way. He cuts right in front of Corey Jones' SUV as it's parked. He positions himself diagonally, front end to Corey Jones' vehicle, with their bumpers mere feet apart, in an unmarked van with zero indication whatsoever that he's a law enforcement officer at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday turning to Sunday. That's what he chose to do. And instead of doing what anybody would expect and conducting a regular stop and getting behind the SUV, pulling all the way in front. He is blocking 2 lanes of traffic that are coming off of that interstate with an unmarked van. He jumps out. He's got no indication whatsoever he's a law enforcement officer. He's wearing jeans. He's wearing an inside-out t-shirt, a hat, no badge, nothing. And what does he do? Well, you're going to know what he does because you're going to hear it. And he tells you too. He runs around the front of that van and immediately becomes confrontational with Corey Jones. It's going to show all the evidence builds up. It's absolutely ridiculous what he did. It's grossly negligent when you talk under the law. It's just flat out reckless. That's what he chose to do. That was his decision with one only expected outcome. You got Corey Jones stranded in a vehicle waiting for a tow truck, and this is what he gets confronted with 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, Corey Jones, he's got an expensive jump kit. He goes into not the nicest parts of Delray Beach for his job. So he did what any lawful American can do. He purchased a firearm. .380 hand. You can't even try to create the situation that came about. He got that gun 2 days prior to this event. It was still in the box in his glove compartment. But as soon as that defendant recklessly pulls up to him at 3 o'clock in the morning, in the way that he did, that gun came out of that box. Corey Jones knew what was exactly about to happen. What any reasonable person could expect to happen. You'll show through the evidence today and through the next 2 weeks what Corey Jones was thinking. You'll hear how Corey Jones had that gun out of that box. You'll hear the chimes of the door opening on Corey Jones' SUV because he still had the keys in the ignition. And you'll hear the last words that Corey Jones ever spoke in this world. They weren't confrontational words. They weren't fighting words. They were calm words that unfortunately turned to fear. Because there's the defendant. Nothing that shows he's an officer. He didn't even pull out the badge, which was in his wallet, in his back pocket, to show to Corey Jones. Much less put on that vest that said police, or even had his radio or his gun. There's no verbal identification that you're going to hear on that recording when Corey Jones was talking to that sales representative that had to sit there and witness this horrific event unfold. There's nothing but an overly aggressive and immediately hostile attitude. You hear it for yourselves. You make the decision. You're the judges of the credibility of everybody, including him, because you will hear from him. You'll hear, when he jumps out of that van, you'll hear something fast, real short, and Corey Jones' response is, huh? I'm good. That's his response. With as much effect as that. And what's the response from our law enforcement officer on duty that's supposed to be helping a stranded citizen? Really? Yeah, I'm good. Really? That's what he's saying. That's not how an officer talks to a citizen at 3 o'clock in the morning on the side of the road. But that's how he spoke to what he saw with Corey Jones on the side of that road. All the while, when he's saying this, when you listen to this tape, realize things didn't stop. We're not all of a sudden just done with action. As this defendant is saying these words to Corey Jones, and Corey Jones is responding back, he's getting closer and closer to Corey Jones. He's actually chasing Corey Jones away from his vehicle. Corey's already retreating back out of his doorway to the back of his vehicle. A citizen that's stranded on the side of the road, already being chased from his vehicle by an officer who's sitting there saying, "Really?" And when Corey Jones lastly says, "Yeah," now he starts saying even more hostile. "Get your fucking hands up! Get your fucking hands up!" That's what he's screaming. That's how he's treating a stranded citizen. Immediately within seconds, that's what he's saying. Profane words being shouted at a time when a guy is sitting with a broken down car, trying to get home. And what does Corey say? He doesn't respond in kind with profanity. He says, "Hold on, hold on." Once again, "Get your effing hands up. Drop." 3 shots. Corey's running away. He's already retreating behind his vehicle. His weapon shows 3 shots. He chose to fire out of that gun because of the way that he acted. He was aggressive from the start. He immediately began chasing Corey Jones, and he never initially saw a gun. The words that he was speaking, "Show me your effing hands. Get your effing hands up." He didn't see what was in the hands right now. Not until Corey Jones was already being chased behind his vehicle. And when a law enforcement officer is yelling that at anybody, you know what he already had pulled out of his belly holster as a backup weapon in his hand. That's what Corey Jones was confronted with. He didn't choose it. He didn't ask for it. It got thrust upon him by the person that was supposed to be caring for his safety. He made a decision to shoot first and ask questions later. That was his decision. But see, this isn't the end of the story. Because now Corey Jones is running for his life. He is running for the cover of darkness. He's thrown down the gun already that he had in his hand that was meant to protect him. And you got 10 seconds. Because he didn't stop shooting. No, he kept shooting. But you got 10 seconds. That doesn't sound like a long time. When you sit there and you look at that clock and you hear those seconds tick away, and you consider that Corey Jones is running for his life after being shot at on the side of the road, that's forever. 10 seconds between the third and the fourth shot. 10 seconds for a young man running for the cover of darkness. 10 seconds for that defendant right there to finally do what he is supposed to do as a law enforcement officer. But that's not what the evidence is going to show he did. It's going to show his recklessness. His absolute reckless behavior from the start is now changing. It's evolving. It's now becoming a premeditated intent to kill. That 10 seconds was the time that he was able to reflect and consider what he was doing with that firearm in his hand. As he was pointing it towards a fleeing Corey Jones, as he was thinking about, do I pull this trigger? Am I hunting a human being? That is no longer recklessness. That is no longer just in the heat of the moment. That is now premeditated intent with one specific desire, and that was to kill Corey Jones. He fired those last 3 shots at 1 second intervals each. Controlled. Boom! 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 Not fast, but controlled. Once again, he's got an opportunity to act like a cop, finally. Instead, he proves himself to be that bad exception that disgraces the badge that men and women wear. He waits over 30 seconds to call 911. And why was he calling 911? Because he didn't have his radio on him like he's supposed to. He had to use his own phone to call 911, and he waited 30 seconds to call. Before getting medical assistance for Corey Jones, before getting much needed assistance, if he was truly in fear of his life, well, he needs to call Calvary. 30 seconds. Doing what? Letting Corey Jones die. And think, how is he going to act when he picks up that phone with 911? What is he going to say? You see, with great power comes great responsibility. Law enforcement officers undoubtedly possess great power, great capacity for good. But that necessarily equals great responsibility in the way that those powers are used. They have a right to kill a person if necessary. But they don't have a right to kill anybody without absolute necessity. They definitely don't have a right to go and recklessly create the situation which then causes them to kill somebody. And that's what the judge is going to instruct you on when he tells you and explains what's necessary for us to prove manslaughter and attempted first-degree murder. You're going to hear the law. It's manslaughter means Corey Jones is dead, and it's by the culpable negligence or act of that defendant. And he's going to explain to you, the judge will tell you what culpable negligence means. He's going to say it means a course of conduct showing a reckless disregard for human life or the safety of other persons exposed to its dangerous effects of conscious indifference to the consequences. I couldn't have thought up better words to explain exactly what he did. From the time he chose to go that wrong way, that's what it is. Attempted first-degree murder. We've got to show that he did some act intended to cause the death of Corey Jones with a premeditated design to kill Corey Jones, and that it would have resulted in the death of Corey Jones, but he failed. And I'm going to explain that. You see, he was reckless from the start. He created the situation, and the evidence is going to show you that he could have only expected one result: the death of Corey Jones. And that's manslaughter. It doesn't matter if we're bad. It doesn't matter if you're homeless. It's manslaughter. But see, he doesn't get a free pass under the law for those last 3 shots. The last 3 shots that he waited 10 seconds to deliver, and took 1 second intervals in between each one. The law doesn't give him a free pass for those shots. It doesn't give him a free pass for that now fully formed, premeditated attempt to kill Corey Jones. You see, those last 3 shots are entirely different. Because now, he wanted to do one thing in Corey's life. Period. Corey was shot through the heart. He actually had his heart destroyed by that bullet, which is horrifically symbolic, saying that this young man lost his life because he lost his heart. You're going to hear a medical examiner come up here, forensic pathologist, and explain to you all the injuries that Corey Jones sustained. He was shot in the left forearm, fractured the bone in his forearm to the point where it compounded. It came out of his skin. He was shot in the back of the arm, the back. of this arm, on the right side of the upper arm, and went through right at him. He was shot in the right side of his chest, and that bullet ripped through his body, destroyed his aorta, and lodged into his left shoulder. That bullet resulted in his death. There wasn't any coming back. The medical examiner is going to tell you that it also resulted in his relatively immediate incapacitation. He could move a couple yards, maybe 10, 20 feet after receiving that, but then he was dropping dead. Now, you're going to hear different opinions. Defense attorneys, of course, are going to call the medical examiner and tell you Corey could have made the distance between where his gun lay and where his body was. 125 feet. 125 feet between where Corey's gun was thrown down and where Corey Jones's body was. That's outrageous. The medical examiner that literally held Corey's heart in her hand is going to tell you that there's no way that he would have been able to run that distance. But the defense is going to have somebody, I'm sure they're going to say something different. But see, he's charged with theft, first-degree murder, not first-degree murder. He's charged with 2 shots out of that last 3 that didn't hit Corey Jones. See, it doesn't matter whether he makes the distance or not by the way he's charged. Because he's charged with that fully formed, premeditated intent to try to kill Corey. Whether he shot and killed him in one of those last 3 shots, at minimum 2 of those shots, he was trying to kill Corey Jones. And that is why he's guilty of attempted first-degree murder. And why, under the law, he doesn't get a free pass. Even if he says that Corey Jones could have run 125 feet, literally, no harm. Now, there's going to be a large amount of evidence. There's going to be a lot of witnesses that are presented here. This investigation took time. You're going to see the evidence. You're going to see the evidence that was obtained without an intent to charge, but to investigate. Things that are good for the state, things that are bad for the state, things that are good for the defendants, things that are bad. All the evidence is going to be brought to you. You're going to hear from folks that stayed at the Doubletree Hotel that was right there on that offering. They're going to tell you things that they heard. They're going to tell you things that they saw. You'll hear from the first responders and the medics that got to the scene initially. You'll hear about how the defendant had 0 indication whatsoever that he was a law enforcement officer. 0 way to identify him when those first responders showed up. You'll hear how he even tells those first responders that he saw Corey run away and throw his gun behind the SUV. His words. In the moment as first responders are showing up. You'll hear the dispatch. But here's 911 call. You're going to see a transcript from that 911 call. You'll hear that even after 30 seconds of that defendant thinking about what he was going to say, he starts off the 911 call. 30 seconds after that 6th shot, how do you think he's going to start off? He starts off by screaming, "Drop that effing gun right now." 30 seconds after the 6th shot. Corey Jones is dead. And that's how he starts off the call to 911. Why is that? Because he's had 30 seconds to think about it. The gun's already been thrown behind the SUV. He even tells the sergeant about that. You'll hear him tell the 911 operator, Corey came out with a handgun, the defendant gave him commands and identified himself as a law enforcement officer, and Corey began to run, so I shot him. You're going to hear his words, you're going to see it plain as day in a 911 transcript. You will not absolutely not hear him identify himself at any time. Because see, what he didn't know was that Bo and Corey Jones was laying there on his floor and recording everything that happened. He had no idea about that. He thought that his 911 call would be the first thing that anybody heard that was reported. He didn't know that there was another recording. You hear about all the evidence from the crime scene. You hear about casings that came out of his firearm. You hear about the gun of Corey Jones, the Chrome 380, empty oil bottles from Matthew Huntsberger. You'll see the gun of Corey Jones is 70 feet behind his car, 125 feet away from his time. It shows the flight that Corey Jones was taken away from his vehicle. Fight or flight. Corey made a decision. It was flight. He didn't make it. You'll see pictures of the van pulled up to the SUV less than 7 feet away. Who pulls up like that? Not a law enforcement officer. And you'll hear about the investigation. Attempts, admittedly, by investigators to try to show how could this defendant over here see that gun? Well, it's a shiny silver gun. Maybe something reflected off of it. So, of course, it's not singularly focused on trying to prove somebody guilty. It's focused on trying to find out what the evidence is. So, of course, can we show that? Yeah, sure, it's a shiny gun. Of course light's going to reflect off. That means nothing as to where that gun was pointed or what it was doing. It just means that it was a gun that he maybe saw some light reflected off of it. You'll hear about the detail that defendant was supposed to be working when he was supposed to be identifying himself as a law enforcement officer. You'll hear about all the CSI and crime scene folks that came in. Even the FBI came in to assist, research the area, provide expert analysis of the evidence. The gun of Corey Jones, the guns of the defendant were analyzed, the clothes of the defendant was analyzed. All of this you're going to hear about. DNA, fingerprints, in an attempt to try to make sense of what he did, what he chose to do. Months of investigation to try to make sense of it. Sometimes it just is what it is. In this sense, it's a crime. You're going to hear from that defendant right there. You're going to see him. You're going to hear his own words. You see, he made a statement that morning. He provided a statement to law enforcement hours after the shooting. An officer involved shooting. That time was common practice. Explain what you did, why you needed to use deadly force. He didn't know about that phone call that was being recorded. He had no idea that was all actually recorded. And so you're going to hear about how inconsistent that statement he provided is with the phone call, with the physical evidence on the scene, and even with other statements that he made. Because the evidence is going to show that by that point, after having hours of reflection, he was now refining that story that he had created to explain why he just killed an innocent civilian. He says, yeah, you know what? I was supposed to put my vest on when I got the traffic stop. I didn't. That was wrong. Yeah, I screwed up. I should have acted like it was a vehicle and conducted any other traffic stop. I didn't. That was wrong. He admits he's not doing the things that he knows he should for the safety of himself and for the safety of every lawful citizen who depends on officers. He says, Corey Jones jumps out of the vehicle immediately, says, "I'm okay." He says, "Police." And what did Corey do? According to him, during his statement, Corey jumps back and points the gun at him. And now he's afraid for his life. That's what he says in his statement. That's not what happened. That's not what you hear in the AT&T recorded call from the roadside assistance folks. But that's what he knows and he has to say in order to excuse his reckless conduct. In order to justify his premeditated intent. He says where he fired those first 3 shots is absolutely not matched up with the physical evidence. He says he got caught right there between that van and that SUV, and that's where he fired his first 3 shots. Not true. Absolutely 100% false. Those shell casings that came out of his gun are behind Corey's SUV. He had already chased Corey behind his vehicle before he ever fired his first 3 shots. He even says he calls 911 right after those first 3 shots, before he fired shots 4, 5, and 6. Absolutely not true. But see, in his mind, he was going along with that story he created when he first called up 911. He says now Corey Jones twists and turns, and he thinks Corey's going to shoot him again, so he had to shoot 3 more times. These are his words. He also says how he practices pulling out his belly gun, so it's real fast. That is potentially believable. But there's a difference. There's a huge difference between misremembering something and just flat out being untruthful. There's a huge difference between trying to think about what happened and intentionally saying something to help you get away with what you did. We've all seen it. Whether it's kids, whether it's family, coworkers, we all seen it. And you're going to see it again. When you watch him give that statement that morning, you get to judge his credibility. With great power comes great responsibility. We choose to do this. We choose to take on that great power and that great responsibility. He chose to do it. You get to decide whether or not what he said was credible. Which ones are irrefutable? That recording is irrefutable. And who has a less than credible reason to tell you something that actually accords with the evidence that you'll see? You see, you're going to be presented with all the evidence that you need to convict. You're going to see all the physical evidence. You're going to hear all the witnesses. And it's all going to point, all the credible evidence is going to point to one thing: his guilt. You're going to even have more evidence than you need. We're confident that you're going to agree on the one verdict for which all the evidence will support. And that's a verdict finding him guilty as charged of being a reckless killer and for trying to murder Corey Jones. I'm going to ask you to hold him responsible for how he misused that power.